Brodes Media.
I did not think we'd be having this discussion today. The rumors are out there that Nick Castellanos and the Philadelphia Phillies might not be a relationship next year. The Phillies are, quote, open to maybe exploring a trade, and I think it would be dumb. I don't think I would root for it. I believe that he has tremendous value on this baseball team. You don't just replace 30 home runs, 106 RBI, and what he did in the NLDS to beat the Braves by shaking something off of a tree. All right, they don't just grow out of nowhere, especially from the right side of the plate when Rhys Hoskins won't be back due to the fact that Bryce Harper is committing to first base during the long term here. So I don't know. My gut tells me I don't like it. It could be a knee-jerk reaction because of what happened in the NLCS. And we can look at Kyle Schwarber as an example. It's not as if he started to dominate in that series against the Braves. But once the Diamondbacks came to town, it was a different monster. It was a different beast. As soon as it switched to the next series, my guy took off. And I don't want to react to just one bad series that was problematic, and that stretch he went on was so absurd. 0 for 20 plus. He was a part of the reason why you failed that series. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but there's still so much that he does that I think you're just writing off because of the we're living in the now and remembering how it ended, but forgetting that he had, 4 home runs against the Braves. He helped you take down arguably one of the most powerful offenses this game has ever seen. Without him going off, I don't know if you're in that position. Okay, so in the regular season, he had 29 home runs, 106 RBI, and in the NLDS, he hit 467 with 4 bombs. Let's start here. If you are an opposing team willing to call the Phillies for a possible acquisition of Castellanos, you'd have to be a competing team, meaning you wouldn't want to give up assets that you have on your roster currently that would be good to win baseball games, because the idea of adding Castellanos to your team would be we're flirting around 500, and instead of winning 81 games, we want to win 85. Instead of maybe winning 84 games, we want to win 89. So you don't want to remove anything solid on your roster and then replenish it with Castellanos, because then you're removing something. The value of Castellanos is bringing that mix to what you already have to give you a push. There's no reason to just take Castellanos and then give away something spectacular. It defeats the purpose. So you wouldn't be getting, in my eyes, unless Dave Dombrowski is a wizard and pulls a Howie Roseman and he can flip things that don't make sense and you can get all this crazy stuff. There's a few guys that I'd be willing to do it for, okay? It's not like I'm completely out of it all around. If you can replace Aaron Nola and get a real number 2 and then still sign Sonny Gray, so then it's Wheeler, someone you get back for Nick, and then you can get, but who would do that? That doesn't make sense. That's not anything that's really logical. Why would anybody do that? Because then, sure, you have Nick Castellanos on your team, but you lose something extremely important like a starting pitcher on your pitching staff. So the reason I bring this up is the only thing you'd get back in return, in my eyes, would be prospects. And this team is ready to win now. You have to maximize this roster now. And they were 2 games away from going to back-to-back World Series. And yeah, they fell short to the Houston Astros that were better than them. But I think they were the best team in baseball last year until they fell flat on their face with 2 games to go at home with Wheeler and Nola on the mound. And yeah, he was a part of that. There's no doubt he was a part of that. And he struggled in the first season under the Phillies. He still is a huge threat, and he bats 7th in your lineup. Imagine Nick Castellanos being a 7-hole hitter and what that means for the opposing teams that have to try and run through this batting order. I don't know. I just think it's a very knee-jerk reaction. Now, I do trust Dave Dombrowski, and one of my buddies who is very involved in the baseball world, he thinks this is just media throwing things at the wall and hoping that there's a bunch of clicks that get involved, and it's more speculation. And this was reported originally from a reporter on MLB.com, so it has more weight than just something local and something that's being thrown around by maybe someone that doesn't have a lot of support behind their name. So it is coming from an MLB.com source. I don't think this is one of those, we're just going to randomly try and spark something during winter meetings and see if anything takes off. There's probably legitimacy to it. And with Dave Dombrowski, I do trust him. And if you bring in someone like Soler, I can live with it to play your outfield. But I prefer keeping Nick Castellanos instead of just getting rid of him completely. I think that would be the best idea in my eyes, and I said this at the time of when the season ended. I said this at the time of when things went south for this baseball team. I think it was more execution than it is their philosophy. They were up 2-0 on the Diamondbacks, and they put up a 10 spot and annihilated them. Nobody was having any issues with the idea of being a team that mashes then. They just didn't execute. Them swinging out of the zone, that's them not executing the game plan. Stop swinging out of the zone. Stop swinging out of the zone. Trey Turner, Alec Bohm, these guys falling apart. I feel we're pointing the fingers at Nick Castellanos more than the rest of the crew. Alec Bohm was non-existent in that NLCS. Trey Turner fell apart insanely. JT Realmuto wasn't very strong either. It was the collective group that failed. And Nick got the majority of the blame because of how ice cold he went. He was super hot, red hot, tearing the cover off the ball to essentially being exactly who he was the first year here in Philadelphia, which is problematic. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve any of the blame. I'm saying just because he had an ugly downfall there, I can't pretend like what he did to help beat the Braves isn't something that's in his bag. And if I want to go compete for another World Series, I have bigger problems than Nick Castellanos right now, and that's getting your starting rotation intact, because letting Aaron Nola go, which I don't think they're going to match any contract if he's going to get the big bucks in the long-term years that Aaron Nola is looking for. Sonny Gray doesn't move the needle enough for me to be plugged behind Zach Wheeler, and then there's automatically your 1-2 punch with Ranger being your 3. Now, someone that makes sense for me to move would be a Taijuan Walker. That's the level of guy and the type of outing that I saw this season that would make me question, would it be worth it to try and remove that contract? Not Nick. Nick gave you 30 home runs and over 100 RBI. Where do you just replace that? Where do you get that again? And if your answer is Soler, okay, fine. Go get Soler and then show me something reasonable and worth moving Nick Castellanos for. Because if you're going to get just prospects back in return because whatever team wants him still wants to keep their roster intact, then it's not just Soler and prospects that make me feel good about where this current team is to continue to build off these World Series and NLCS seasons that we just witnessed. It's not.